Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So, one of the viewers asked me a question, and to be totally honest, couldn't answer him straight away. Not something I've ever done or tried, so this is going to be a bit of an experimentation. But although I've done videos on the dual receivers, so the NB4, NB4 Plus, NB4 Pro and Pro Plus, these can all bind to two receivers at once. But the question that they've asked is, what happens with the BVD monitoring? Now, I know on all other receivers, it just numbers the first one 0 and then 1, 2, 3 and so on. But let's have a look what happens if we take two separate receivers with two separate batteries, both with their own BVD cable, and see how we can get that to display on the actual transmitter. Now, most of this should work on all of them. The only thing that will be different is how it displays on the main screen. So let's bring in for a close-up look and see what kind of mess we get into with this one. So we're going to need a whole bunch of things to get this to work. First off, we're going to need a power source for the first receiver. So for this one, we're going to get a battery, a speed controller as motor, and I'm just going to wire this up basic. There is multiple ways to wire this, and you can have auxiliary controls on extra channels, but we've got enough going on in this video. So if we imagine this is either your tractor unit or the main part of the RC. So for this one, I'm going to go with the FGR 8B, because we're more likely to have lights and everything else controlled off of this. But it can be any of the enhanced receivers, even the flight ones will do it. So the FTR 12, FTR 8 and the likes, and also the waterproof ones. Any enhanced receiver can be used. So first off, let's have a look at signal. So we'll plug this into channel 2, with it being ESC, but all positive and negatives are connected on the channels apart from the BVD. So we'll put as power source into channel 2. That'll get us as receiver powered up. Then we'll get us BVD cable. And this goes in the end port. And it is marked BVD. Now, as always on this, you need to be careful. You do not need to use the negative cable. So as positive, just goes into positive on the balance lead. Or you can have it connected. We could solder it directly to positive on the ESC feed, wherever's more convenient for you. But if we then connect this, and we'll get this into bind mode, so we'll press it, power it up. That's one in bind mode. And thank you, Hobbywing, for making speed controllers that quieten the send down as soon as you've powered them up. Next, we're going to prepare our second enhanced ESC, and this I'm just going with FGR 4D, but it can be any of the other enhanced ones. So top port is as BVD. I'm going to connect that. I'm going to connect, because again it's the battery that's ultimately powering the receiver. Even though this goes through the speed controller, it's still the battery that's powering it. So if it's the one that's powering it, the only one we need to connect is the positive. The only time this would be any different at all is if you're monitoring a battery that does not go through the the receiver. So we'll just put positive into as positive connector on the balance lead, and I'm not going to power that one up yet. Then we're going to bring in our actual transmitter. So let's power this up.
Welcome to Noble Pro Plus.
And I'm just going to take a second to rearrange how I've got camera, just so we can get rid of some of this glare off at screen. So we have our first receiver sitting in bind mode. We're going to pick a new model. We're going to go into it. We're going to go into as model. Channel number definitions. Now with this one, we've got 8 on that receiver and 4 on this receiver, so we got a total of 12. So we can set it to 12, so all of them will be assignable. Then we can come out. We're going to go into RX set. we're going to go to bind set. You've got to make sure when you first turn it on, this won't be ticked. So we tick the dual RX mode. So we're binding 2 receivers. Your first one, and this is one where I've seen people get really confused. So the first master, we are setting channel 1 as steering. So it will go 1 upwards. So 1 to 8 will be on here. Our slave, we want from 8 onwards. So we want this to start at channel 9. That will give us the full 12 channels. Obviously, if you're using this on the NB4 or NB4 Plus, you've only got channels 1 to 8. So you could use 2 4 channels, or you could use a 4 and an 8 and then use iBus 2 or sensors on the extra ports. Just because you haven't got the channels, you can still use the ports. So there is some reason to use more than an 8 channel receiver on the NB4 and the NB4 Plus. So while we've got as first one in bind mode, we can bind to as master.
Binding successful.
Once we've got that done,
Power off receiver first.
we can then get our second receiver, press an alt bind button, and we just need to power it. And when this is in bind mode, we can bind as slave.
Binding successful.
So then we have 2 receivers, both bound up to 1 transmitter. Then we can come out. And what we're going to want to do now is enter as sensor panel. So we can go display. If we scroll down, obviously this is a 3S battery and we're monitoring the voltage just above 11 volt. And if we scroll down, we can see BVD voltage 1. The top one is 0. And a second one, this is a 2S pack that we're running. So we can see we've got 7.68 volt. It is an high voltage one. So we can confirm you will be able to see both of the BVD voltages separate. Then you can go to choose to display it. So we've got as TX voltage on number 1. So on number 2, we can go in, we can scroll down to as first BVD voltage. And then number 3, we can scroll down and we've got as first one voltage 0. Now if we scroll all the way down, we've got BVD voltage 1. So if we come off that, now you've got your transmitter voltage, you've got the voltage of your main pack powering your ESC, and you've also got the voltage of your pack that's powering your external or independent second receiver, and this can be in your trailer and controlling your lights or the legs for your truck or anything else that you'd want to do. And it's really handy to be able to see all 3 voltages. You know if your transmitter's going flat, you know if your main battery's going flat, and you know if your secondary battery's going flat. Now I've done plenty of other videos on how to set this RX icon, so you can set that to be any of them voltages. You can also go into the sensor panel and then we can go to choose sensors. You can go into here. You've got a little switch on bottom. You can turn that on. You can have a low voltage and a high voltage for each one of the sensors independent. And you can turn that up and down. So if it's a 2S battery, you might want to set it to 6.3 volt or 6.6. Your high voltage, with this one being set currently for 2S, if we wanted it on 3S, so we're going to have to go above the voltage it is, and then it'll stop beeping at us. So you basically want to work out what your full pack voltage is. Once you've done that, you set your high voltage to be just above it. It's never going to trigger really. And then your low voltage, you can choose whatever you like. So if you wanted 3 volts per cell to be the alarm trigger, personally I'd set it a bit higher. So maybe 9.9 volt, 3.3 volt per cell. And as long as your high alarm voltage is above what the fully charged pack is, it's not going to set alarm off. But this way, even if you're not watching your sensors, your batteries would get an alarm. And if we go into the second one, bearing in mind this is 2S, so 8.4 volt will not trigger, and then set it to 6.6 volt, and then this will give you an alarm for your second pack. And we've got the voltages reading out the whole time here. Obviously, if you're really enjoying driving your RC, you might not see one of these creep down to your low voltage, but you will get the alarm for it, so it's not going to be an issue. Especially if you've got this second one just running lights, LED lights, you might get it in running in there for hours and hours on end without it triggering, without checking it, and it'd be easy to leave one of these connected and then end up draining your battery too low and then it won't charge. Whereas this way, as soon as it gets down to your alarm voltage, which is 6.6 volt on that, it'll trigger the alarm and you'll know, you'll be able to see which one is triggering it. But yeah, really nice that the BVD does pick up even though you're binding 2 separate receivers, and hopefully that answers your question. So let's wrap this one up. So there you have it. Running dual receivers with BVD cables. You can monitor both sets of batteries. The other thing you can do, if you don't want to monitor your main battery, but say you've got a second battery in the actual cab unit and that's powering all the LEDs, you could use the positive and the negative to monitor that voltage. Just remember, you don't need the positive and negative if ultimately the battery you're monitoring is connected to your receiver. So just remember, whatever battery is running the actual receiver, be it through an ESC, then a BEC down to the receiver, or a battery connected directly to that receiver, the BVD cable only needs the positive connected. The only time you would connect the negative is if the battery is completely standalone, powering some LEDs, and that doesn't interact with your receiver at all. Then you run the positive and negative to the battery and you can monitor it that way. But yeah, there's a lot of uses for it. It's really convenient. It's a quite small thin cable, so it's easy to hide away, and it's really convenient, especially running a setup like this where you might not be keeping an eye on the battery in the trailer on your secondary receiver, to be able to set the alarms or just at a glance have them all on screen. Really convenient. And I'm quite happy that FlySky have actually thought ahead and made this work. But thanks again for watching WTF Rc Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.